idea. I think creating a research center is phenomenal. My only thought, and it's really a question, is could we expand it still if we were keeping naming, invoking the name of Harriet Tubman? Could we think about race and gender in a broader sense, that research, looking at intersectionality and so on? That's just my reaction to it.
Oh, what? I get Jay and then Dr. Ayers. Or you?
Yeah, I can go. I'm not reacting to this. I think the research center is a good idea. I was more reacting to the monument, memorial, plaque conversation. You've already mentioned, Glenn, that we had previous ideas and requests for a Native American and for a contraband memorial or statue of some kind. And we can do this on an ad hoc, case-by-case basis. But what may be more strategic is to, and again, without avoiding the appearance of bureaucratic delay, and not creating a process like they have at the mall in D.C. where it takes an act of Congress to get a monument on the mall. I'm not suggesting anything like that, but when these ideas come in and we have them, there should be a process for us to somehow consider them more systematically, refer them, and in the context of an overall, I don't want to call it a landscape plan, but we can call it a memorial, where we have thought through where on this property are appropriate places and an appropriate arrangement. And maybe, I don't want to create another study group or another committee, but perhaps we could expand the mission of the folks working on the African Landing Memorial Art Project, because they're already giving a lot of thought to placement in place to think about what the process would be for dealing with specific suggestions for physical memorials, plaques, or monuments.
Dr. Ayers?
I'd like to build on the last two comments, which I think, the last several comments, which are excellent. I would say that there's been one of the most exciting things in scholarship in the last few years has been a remarkable amount of attention given to the refugee camps of the Civil War era. I think we might play a convening role by bringing together some of the scholars who've done many prize-winning works to help us think through the broader landscape of all the women, especially African-American women, who helped deal with that refugee crisis. The most recent estimate is 100,000 African-American people died in the refugee camps of the Civil War era. And so you think about the roles of nurses and the people helping to take care of that. So something that we could do that would both help us think through more fully what processes we might go through, but also sort of announce to the world that we're thinking about this, responding to this public suggestion, would be something that we could do that would tap into a lot of work that's already been done that people would like to share.
So, and I think, Dr. Ellis started us off with thinking too about the many ways we can honor people. I mean, we tend to think about monuments, but I mean, the notion of a research center named after someone is another way that we can make a lasting impact and not just have a physical statue or monument, but also have lasting research that broadens our understanding and knowledge and brings more people to Fort Monroe to study and do the scholarly work and understanding that we're just starting to scratch the surface of, frankly, as Americans. So I like Jay's notion that we perhaps broaden the committee that's working on African landing to think about this as a broader context. I don't know what you think, Glenn, as to whether doing that now complicates the work of an African landing group, or if we need a separate group. But it seems to me we should, put together sort of a portfolio of the opportunities we'd like to, and stories we'd like to tell and honor, and the multiple ways that could happen, and maybe put something together for larger board conversation, so that, again, not to kick the can down the curb or take too long, but so that we do it in a thoughtful, deliberate way and don't miss out, and only look at it as, let's add statues for everything, but what are the portfolio ways that we can really tell these stories in a meaningful, lasting deep way. And some of that will be statutes, and they're appropriate. Some of it may be research centers or programs or annual awards or things of that nature that also help to enrich the story. So I guess I look to you in terms of whether you think Jay's suggestion of, adding that to the scope of work already being done by the existing committee, or whether it's another committee, how you would like to suggest we structurally build on this rich conversation.
I think we added to, we bring it up as a discussion item among the African Landing Memorial Art Project. We've got the Virginia Art Commission on there. I think they can help us. I'll just quickly say, and then we need to get to John Reynolds. John, we see your hands
Oh,
up.
I'm sorry, I keep not seeing hands, I apologize.
We had hoped, I had hoped when we did the waterfront park that we would actually get down to the granular stage of where would memorials be, and the reality was we were still wrapped around the axle of where are utilities and where are property lines, and so we're much further along now than we are. It's still complicated. We have had people who have said, what if we brought this particular memorial to Fort Monroe? It's got to be in context. It's got to be in a contextual place, and then you've got all the overlays of the programmatic agreement that even go down in the historic landmark district. That even go down to the visual environment, and so there are things in the visual environment that can't be blocked. I mean, we tried to put the National Park Service sign that ended up in front of the YMCA. As a landscape architect, I thought the perfect place was Cannon Park. I mean, it was the photo op. Everybody would want to be in Cannon Park with the fortress right behind it, and their family, leaning against the sign. And Department of Historic Resources would not let us put the sign in Cannon Park. And so it isn't easy, but we've got a lot more experience than we had in the past. And I think that bringing it up to the committee we already have is a great role. They may kick it to someone else. We may do something different, but that's a great place to start.
Mr. Reynolds, I apologize, I didn't see your hand.
Well, that's because you're not facing the screen, right?
That's right.
So this is a really rich discussion with a lot of pieces, and it's to take us back to Dr. Ellis started it off, and Dr. Ayers, I think, kind of added a piece to all of that. As a society, we generally think of things, a statue or a memorial on the ground or something, and then we kind of think, well, we're done with it. And I think the strength of what Dr. Ellis and Dr. Ayers have expressed is that it's dynamic. It's something dynamic. It's something ongoing. It's something that learns from itself and from society and brings views over time that change. And somehow they get, through some structure, those things get discussed and researched and talked about and spread out through the society. So they relate to the evolution of society as opposed to a thing which says, she was great, he was great, they were great, and we're done with that, let's go on to the next thing. So I cannot express more forcefully enough how much I hope that we take Dr. Ellis's and Dr. Ayers' ideas and expand on them and try to make Fort Monroe not just a place where things can be seen, but a place where thoughtfulness can take place, where research can happen, and where the results of that can be available to the society as a whole. And I don't know how to say that any better. I also want to say that I give great credence to Jay's comment about, he didn't say it this way, but, you can end up with a proliferation of ideas for commemorative works. And so you can have, you can think about it, you could have, I'll say sticks, but statues everywhere. And I've talked to Glenn a little bit about this, and actually this morning I forwarded Glenn the policy on commemorative works from the Presidio of San Francisco, because we got faced with the same thing. And I also sent him the National Park Service Policy Handbook, which deals extensively, because you can imagine in 419 units in the National Park System, how you deal with the constant request for commemoration of this and commemoration of that gets to be pretty difficult. So we must not forget Jay's suggestion, I think. So thank you for letting me expound a little bit, but I have deep, heartfelt feelings about what Dr. Ellis and Dr. Ayers have brought up.
Thank you. Yes, Destry.
So one thought comes to mind that would perhaps be a corollary to the suggestion of a research center, and that is 25 years ago, Park Service, one particular person at the Park Service, got to the Canon Corporation, the electronic corporation, to sponsor what we call the Canon Scholars Program. And basically, we did a competition to doctoral students to write their thesis on subjects that Park Service needed research done on. And there was cash involved that went to those doctoral students to fund their research for a period of time, several years, 2 or 3 years in some cases. And then they produced a thesis which they had to present to the Park Service. And you know, they got notoriety, they got paid to do their research, and I mean, it worked out really well. And I think you could do something, you know, I happen to be a person who really loves seeing students get opportunities, and put them to work that way, basically, to expand the research potential of a place like Fortin Row.
I think that really fits well with what Dr. Ellis was suggesting.
Yeah, I mean, that's something that the foundation could conceivably pursue finding a sponsor for, that would then fund it for a period of time.
Anyone else want to say anything? I see a lot of head nodding. Just Delegate Munlin.
I'll just make a couple of comments. One specific to the broad discussion at the moment, and my agreement that we should probably at least have the committee that's working on the African landing project, and maybe determine some other level of committee that would deal with this. But I think that we would be very smart to develop a process and a strategic plan about how we're going to go about putting all these projects into place. And we have, you know, obviously the African Landing Memorial is underway. We haven't even completely funded that project yet. So I think developing a strategic plan around all those wonderful projects that we can do here and that are appropriate for the fort, but that we don't get into a trap of kind of going willy-nilly and doing a hodgepodge. We want to do it, and we want to do it well. And I think these are all wonderful ideas that certainly are worthy of our further consideration. So that's all I want to say on that. And then the second thing I wanted to comment on, if I may, was the African Landing Memorial Art Project. And just the discussion earlier, I wanted to comment on it, and I didn't at the time, but I think it is significant that what makes that project really special here at Fort Monroe is that this was a project that was well underway before any of what is happening now in the country took hold. And so I think that, to me, that acknowledges that Fort Monroe was already ahead of the curve on where we are as a country and the things that we should be looking at and acknowledging and moving forward. So just wanted to make that comment. I think it's part of what's really making Fort Monroe special, is that we're really ahead of the curve in acknowledging our history and making, you know, a special. I'm just seeing what, you know, the work and the location, and as you were, you know, just felt really special about looking at that photograph of where it's going to be, and obviously all the thought that's going in artistically to how we're going to portray that. It's really, I really can't wait to see it all unfold. But I think that's part of what makes that project even more special.
Any other comments?